So, Mr. Seydou Nketia, you recall that before the declaration of 9th January 2021,
December
9th December 2021,
It's Akoto Ampaw.
oh, relax. 9th December 2020, your party and your presidential candidate held a series of press conferences on what you consider to be the outcome of the elections. Is that not so?
It is so, my lord.
And in those press conferences, you announced to the whole world that the petitioner had won the presidential elections and was, by the votes you had collated, the president-elect. Am I correct?
My lord, that is not in my witness statement.
No. Where is it? Yes, the paper. So can you answer that question? You did say so, didn't you?
Come again.
I said your party, including your good self, and the first petitioner, and also one Otokuno, your deputy, together with other leading members of your party, you held several press. So I'm putting it to you that your party held a number of press conferences.
Yes, my lord, that is so.
Now, in those press conferences, or in some of them, you were present and you spoke on the issue of the results of the presidential elections.
Yes, my lord.
The petitioner himself also spoke on the outcome of the presidential elections.
Yes, my lord.
And your as deputy, Tokuno, equally spoke on the results of the presidential elections.
My lord, I can attest to my statement at a forum where the petitioner was present and he spoke. But I don't remember being present at a forum where my deputy spoke.
Now, you know that your presidential candidate that is the petitioner, asserted that he had won the 2020 presidential elections.
You're welcome to The Law. This is your legal light. It is your health law. And this afternoon, we are dedicating this program to celebrating, not mourning, celebrating Anthony Akoto Ampaw. There's been very revealing commentary about him since his passing in October. Particularly at the National Theatre on Wednesday, when friends from civil society, including from the bar and the judiciary, got together. It was just mind-blowing, the things that we heard about him. So I say he did more than the law. In 1980, that's when he graduated in law, and he was a student leader. Anthony Akoto Ampaw became a member of the National Affairs Discussion Group, that is the NADIC, as one of the few student members, which led to him being a founding member of the New Democratic Movement. He did a lot, and I'm not going to attempt to suggest that I know anything about him. This afternoon, we are talking the law practice, the Akoto Ampaw example. Very soon, you'll understand what I mean by the Akoto Ampaw example. Leaders of civil society who worked with him, some of them are joining us, and they have very revealing stuff to speak about to us so that we can learn. First on our lists, graciously agreed to speak to us. And in fact, she also did a tribute. If you were at the funeral and you took a copy of the brochure, you would see one of the names, Emerita Professor Techiwa Menu. She was the director of the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana from 2002 to 2009. She's a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. She's a Ghanaian academic and author. She's an emerita professor of the University of Ghana, and until her retirement in May 2017, she served as the director of the Social Development Policy Division of the United Nations Economic Commission for West Africa, ECA, located in Addis Ababa. Prof obtained her Bachelor of Laws degree in 1974. Prof, thank you so very much for making time to join us this afternoon as we continue the celebration of Akoto Ampaw.
Thank you very much, Samson. Good afternoon to you and to our viewers and to my fellow panelists.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. For those of us who didn't have the privilege of being at the memorial event organized by civil society, and also those who have not had the opportunity of being at the funeral and reading the brochure and the many comments that have come, what is top on your mind to share with us this afternoon?
Thank you. So this is very difficult for all of us.
That's right.
Mr. Akoto Ampaw was actually a year ahead of me at the Faculty of Law, the then Faculty of Law. So he entered the university in 1970, I entered in 1971, and both of us were in Mensa Saba Hall. And he got his LLB, he obtained his LLB degree in 1973, whilst I obtained mine in 1974. And after his LLB, he embarked on an LLM program. So we were both in the same hall. He was a keen sportsman, and I think you heard some of the tributes about how even when he did not score the goal, he was the one who was being cheered. we became very close after around 1974, 1975. And after my graduation, after my call to the, well, I wasn't called to the bar. I had passed my bar exams, but I proceeded immediately after my bar to a master's program at the University of Dar es Salaam. And Sheshe was one of my main interlocutors. He was the one who was feeding me with news of what was going on in Ghana. And as you remember, this was during, you know, our interminable military regime days.
That's right.
So by the time I returned to Ghana after my LLM program in 1978 and joined the University of Ghana, Sheshe had more or less almost become a full-time political worker. And this is when our relationship really blossomed. And we worked together in the National Affairs Discussion Group to what would eventually culminate in the formation of the New Democratic Movement. And I edited with him the newsletter of the New Democratic Movement direction. And so this is a relationship that goes back some 52 years. And you know, 52 years is almost a lifetime. And just listening to excerpts from the 2020 election petition, it was really uncanny because it is almost impossible to think of Sheshe as no longer with us. But you asked me, what are the memories? Too many. There are too many memories. An incomparable friend, a generous person, very compassionate, really very compassionate, but completely consistent in his defense of the rights, especially of the downtrodden, the oppressed minorities. And here he was absolutely resolute and implacable. And I think that the many tributes that you heard on Wednesday night and also at the funeral attest to his sacrificial self, his disinterest in material possessions, his courageousness, his dedication. I know that it is customary in Ghana to speak well of the dead, but I don't think that anyone that you spoke to could just make up.
We're showing a picture of you and Akoto Ampaw in that really very warm embrace together. And this is actually from the brochure where you gave your tribute. Yes. This thing you said about him, almost everybody attests to the fact that he was disinterested in material wealth, despite the fact that he was in a position deserving of wealth because he was a hard worker. He knew his law. And once you know your law and you work hard, you make good money.
Yes, you know, in fact, I also said in my tribute that the last time, well, I saw him when he was ill, but the last time when I saw him before he took ill, I was teasing him because he was going off, this was over the Christmas, to go and prepare an address to the Supreme Court for a client. And I knew who the client was, I knew about the case, and I was chastising him that he just worked too hard, too much, and that at the end, he did not even charge properly. So one of the standing jokes or banter that we had was that I would go and do his billing for him so that he could at least earn some decent rates, you know, and we laughed because we knew this would not happen. So that was Sheshe. Sheshe was not in the law to make money. If he was, I don't know where he would put all that money.
So you certainly were not one of those who was surprised at all when at the Wednesday event, many spoke about he doing work for them pro bono, including the TUC, including foreigners
No, I was not surprised. That was Sheshe's character. He had also done work for members of my family, and they had been, disturbed that he would not allow them to pay anything. That was Sheshe. That was Sheshe. Sheshe was not motivated by wealth, I mean, of course he got paid, but he would even be a poor negotiator. That was why I was offering to do his billing for him, because he, right. So that was not the motivation, because how could you pay? I mean, somebody who spent nights at the office, how much were you going to pay him? We used to tease him that they did not need a watchman at Akufo-Addo Prempeh & Co. because he did all the watching. And you remember in the tribute from the firm, the old lady, Mrs. Dom, who complained and asked whether he didn't have a bed, because when she went to bed, he was in the office. Yeah. When she woke up in the middle of the night, she was in the office. When she woke up in the morning, he was in the office. Right. So when we're talking about law practice, the Akoto Ampaw way. Right. It means that when you give a brief to Sheshe, you can sleep knowing that he's doing all the work for you. He will do all the research. Recently I did some renovation in my house, and I was redoing my study, and I have a number of boxes with books that I intend to donate to different places. And I came across the source book. You heard about the source book on freedom, on the laws on the freedom of expression in Ghana. It's 1,019 pages, 1,019 pages, all put together by Akoto Ampaw. So that source book I am donating to a new law school that has just opened at Wa in the upper West region. Because I think that successive generations of students will learn so much from this source book, which allows you in one volume to really look at the evolution of the laws on the media and freedom of expression in Ghana. So I remember when he brought me a copy, 1,019 pages that he did, and I was also saying that if the other writings that he had produced, if we managed to read the handwriting, because she had terrible handwriting, I think the computer saved him, because that way once he types, everybody can read it. But when he writes, you have to struggle. But there are thousands of pages that this man has written. And it means work. I mean, Sunday afternoon, the man goes to chambers, to work until early hours of the morning. Saturday, weekdays. So I think that dedication, and I think Yavraham put his finger on it when he was talking about his political work. The way he approached this legal work was an outflow from the political training, from the discipline that he had acquired during the time when he was actively involved in forming the New Democratic Movement and the many struggles that he participated in.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Professor Emerita Techiwa Menu. Thank you very much. I hope that as you listen to her, there is something that you're picking from the life of Anthony Akoto Ampaw. There's too many people since his passing have been revealing things that we never knew about him. Some of us had contact with him. So at the paying our last respects at the State House, lawyers from the Akufo-Addo Prempeh & Co. chambers were called to file past. I got a little late, so I mistakenly joined. And people were surprised. They were asking, but Samson, we don't know you to be in this law firm. My answer to that was, well, I think I was in that law firm through my encounter with Akoto Ampaw. And so that was sufficient for me. Let's go to George Sapong, the Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission. He's a lawyer. And he has some encounters with Akoto Ampaw from way, way back as student leaders. Just Sapon, thank you very much for making the time to join us this afternoon. We'll correct the, we seem to have Just Sapon's line frozen. We'll correct that and get back to him shortly. He's the next person who is speaking to us about Akoto Ampaw. We are looking at the example from him as a lawyer. But as you may know by now, he was more than a lawyer. And there are others who are going to speak to us to share even more with us. He was a consummate professional. He was just humble to a fault, very firm, and fought for many, many causes. What an example of a lawyer he was. We want to, so I'm just reading a portion from the brochure. It says that when Flight Lieutenant General Rawlings overthrew the then democratically elected government, President Hillary Liman, on the 31st of December 1981, Akoto Ampaw and other leading members of the NDM, I've introduced you to NDM already, that's the New Democratic Movement, and Emerita Professor Techua Menu has referred to that also. It says, after several weeks of deliberations, he decided to give critical support to the new regime of the PNDC. The NDM collaborated with Rawlings and the PNDC until 1985, when they broke away because their political views were no longer in alignment. Following this, Akoto Ampaw was placed in political detention by Rawlings' PNDC. Check that. Was placed in detention by Rawlings' PNDC. The first time was in 1986, where he was held in the Tamale prison for 6 months, and again in 1987, where he spent 22 months in the James Fort prison in Accra. During these dreadful times, his siblings, mentioning a number of them, would continue to care for him. And we were told a story, providing food and other necessities while he was in detention. We were told that a friend of his who had also been arrested and taken to another prison approached him and informed him that, I understand we are going to be released. When he was in one prison, he said, why? Why are they releasing us? And guess what his answer, his explanation was for that kind of surprise that he was being released. He said he had just started learning French in prison. He was learning a lot, even in prison. Let's see if George Sapon's line is better now. We'll go to George Sapon, and then we have other lawyers and other CSO leaders who are speaking to us. Some of these people, almost all of them, he did work for. So they have a special encounter with him. Professor Techua Menu's own dates back to their days in the university, Mensa Sabah Hall, right? Okay, so do we have George back on the line? Okay, so we have a little difficulty with George's line. We try to rectify it, but there are others who are also on the line, but we have a certain order by which we want to speak to these people because of the special manner in which they reveal the man Anthony Akoto Ampaw. So George was on, but his line just went off for a brief period.
Yeah. It's hours. We are looking for hours. What is tower? witness statement. Our witness. Yes, can you answer?
Yes, I've seen this in a brown envelope.
So we presume that you know the contents. So we presume that you are speaking, you know the contents of that video clip.
Well, my Lord, I have not played the contents, so I cannot testify that I know what is contained in there.
My Lord, I would need some direction here. This is a problem that arises at trial in the High Court.
Right. Hello, Mr. Judge Sapon. Thank you very much for making time to join us.
Thank you very much, Samson, for including me in this.
Great. So you are the guy who knows Akoto Ampaw from student leadership and beyond, actually introducing him to journalists outside of this country for him to provide legal services. And my word, we heard testimonies how he did the work even beyond Ghana. The Anthony Akoto Ampaw example of law practice, what will you tell student lawyers who are listening now, lawyers who are watching now, and anybody else?
Samson, permit me to illustrate this with a very simple incident. There had been a series of armed robberies in a particular community in Ghana. So the striking force deployed some police people to this community on anti-armed robbery duties. They had not informed the local police because they wanted this to be very confidential. Then somehow they camp at the edge of this town, and the word leaks to the community that there are some strange people who had guns in their car, and therefore they could be the armed robbers. So the townsfolk mobilized and attacked the police. When the local police heard of it, they came. It got really messy. In the circumstance of this, the striking force people from Accra who had gone implicated the local police that they had collaborated with the mob to attack the striking force people. So the local police were put through disciplinary proceedings at the police headquarters. And Uncle Shay happened to represent them. And chose myself and Alex Osewusu to join him. The police had a star witness who told a very consistent story about how the local police collaborated with the mob to endanger the lives of the striking force people. In cross-examination, she held up to her story consistently until finally she broke down, cried, and admitted the falsity of significant aspects of her testimony. Out of the police headquarters, when we got to the car park, Uncle Shay opened his pouch and gave money to the two police officers he was representing for food and for transport back to their base. He was doing this pro bono, but also funding their food and transport. When the guys sought to say thank you to Uncle Shay, he looked at them and said, listen, you are police officers. What I want you to learn from this is that anytime you exercise authority over others, including suspects that you have arrested, remember that they come with the same fears, anxieties, nervousness as you have gone through in these proceedings. So remember that anytime you put people before the law, you must be just and fair. When we parted, Alex Osewusu, we sat in the car, Alex Osewusu turned to me and said, George, can we live up to this standard? Akoto Ampaw was talking to the policemen, but it looks like he was also talking to us.
And Alex Osewusu is someone who worked as a junior for Akoto Ampaw in the Akufo-Addo Prempeh firm.
We were at Akufo-Addo Prempeh and Co together.
Right.
In addition to that, Alex is one of the most decent people you have ever met. So when Alex turns to me and poses the question, George, can we live up to this standard? It was a particularly emotive moment. This illustrated three key things about Akoto Ampaw to me. Number one was his competence in the law, how he was able through cross-examination to get this witness finally to admit to the falsities in her testimony. Two was his humanity, how he treated these poor policemen who didn't even have money to pay him for his legal services and ends up giving them money for food and for transport. But third was the integrity of his mentoring to us both in the law and also in the values of life, about the dignity with which you should approach the law. Samson, this is the man we are talking about. He was a particularly unique character.
In his work for journalists, and you work in a very profound way to help the media landscape and journalists as well. In his work for journalists, it doesn't appear too many people were aware how much he offered and worked to ensure the freedom of the media and the press and for the safety of journalists as well.
Yes, Samson, please permit me at this point to use this also to pay tribute to his colleagues, Professor Kwame Karikari, Professor Emeritus Techueman, that you just spoke to, and many others like him. When Professor Kakari graciously brought me into the Media Foundation when he was setting up, they were not setting up an NGO. It was very clear that these were friends and activists who were committed to a cause. And they put everything into this. So they trained us to understand the values of free expression and to work with people. Uncle Shay was the lifeblood. The first thing that I learned through them was that when people are arrested, for example, across West Africa, all the alert and the activism that we put in are critical. But also critical is the representation in court, because the people have been put before the law. And Uncle Shay never slept any time there was crisis anywhere. We will go to him early morning, we'll go to him in the evening, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in the Gambia, everywhere. Uncle Shay will start off by saying, no, I'm not an expert on the law of this country or that country. But the moment he begins to take you through what are the likely scenarios, you know that this man has truly fed his mind. And he worked with his heart. There was no moment that you knew a journalist was in jail or was in some kind of trouble and Uncle Shay rested.
Right. A lot of lessons there for all of us to take in. Thank you very much, George Sapon.
Thank you very much.
Right. Let's go to speak to someone we are reaching in the United Kingdom, Uguna Ukegwe. Thank you very much. Programs Manager and Commonwealth Rights Initiative UK, Program Development Advocacy. Uguna, thank you so very much for making time to join us this afternoon.
Thank you, Akoto Ampaw. Thank you, Samson. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about Akoto Ampaw.
Right. How did you come to encounter him, and what can you say is the example we all need to take?
Yeah, thank you. And again, good afternoon to your viewers. Let me provide a little context that I knew Akoto Ampaw, who I call Uncle Shay, as more of as a social activist, not necessarily as his legal practice.
That's right.
And I met him in 2008 when I joined the Media Foundation for West Africa as the program officer for media law reform and legal defense. And the Media Foundation for West Africa had this regional network of lawyers, which have been mentioned as well, who offer pro bono services to journalists who are repressed in countries of West Africa. And that network is made up of 10 lawyers from 10 countries, and Akoto Ampaw happened to be a member of the network representing Ghana. And so he was also a member of the RTI coalition. So my first meeting with him was at the RTI coalition meeting in Kufaridra, where we were, we were trying to campaign and get the amendments on the RTI bill. So he had a presentation on the concerns that RTI coalition members had on the bill. And then in 2009, we traveled to the Gambia. So because I was a program officer, I was the one coordinating that regional network of lawyers. So I led the delegation, 3-member delegation, myself, Akoto Ampaw from Ghana, and Patrice Gu, who is from Cote d'Ivoire, to the Gambia. And it was following the arrest of the Gambian journalists, I think there were 7 of them, who were arrested, I think in the Sosie spoke during the event on Wednesday, where she mentioned that it was through her article that those journalists were arrested. So they were detained. And we had Media Foundation wanted to send a group of lawyers to go there on a solidarity mission and also to observe the trial. So I had to take the delegation there. And when we got to the airport, the NIA officials held us at the airport. They were, questioning us as to why we were coming to the Gambia. And before we left, we had written letters to the Nigerian embassy. We wrote a letter to the Ghanaian embassy as well, wrote a letter to British High Commission, just to let them know that we are going. If anything happens to us, they would know that anything happened to us, it was Gambia that is responsible. And we already know the reputation of Jemmy at the time, who had no patience for any criticism against his regime. So I was worried because this was me. I joined Media Foundation in 2008. It was just 1 year in the job, and I was in this kind of huge challenge where I was confronting a regime that is tough. So when they held us at the airport, I was very concerned. But I looked at Akoto Ampaw, Uncle Shay, I prefer to call him. He was calm. He wasn't moved. He had a very casual smile on his face. Mm-hmm. So he gave me courage. I was so young, and I didn't want to. Of course, if I was afraid, then it would affect the team. But again, the team I had, they were all very strong, and nobody was shaking. So after questioning us for an hour, and then I noticed that even when they asked us questions, Akoto Ampaw was very calm. If he needed to respond, he would respond to them, and we'll give them the evidence of our visit and everything. And after about an hour, 30 minutes, they asked us to go. So it turned out that I think it was the president of the Journalists Association in the Gambia at the time.
That's right.
Came to the airport. I think they heard what happened. They came to the airport and they were waiting for our arrival. So they had come waiting for us to pick us up, but we were delayed. So they started asking questions to find out what happened. And then apparently the NIA officials went to them to ask them whether they know us. And they said, yes, that we were coming to visit them. Like he is receiving us. Because we didn't tell them we were coming for a trial observation. Of course, it would have been a bigger issue than it was. So then he vouched for us that he was coming. He's the one that is picking us up. He's coming to see us. And then they allowed us to go. Now they asked us the name of the hotel we're going to stay. They took all our details. So when we got out, the GJA president then told us, listen, we need to have a plan B. We can't have meetings together. We can't have meetings in the hotel because all the hotels are owned by Jame, and we are being monitored. So everything we discussed was discussed in the car. If we were having a meeting, we had a meeting with the Bar Association in the Gambia, we had to go to the office to meet. We had to do our plan as a team. I had to plan with 2 of them, Patrice and Akoto Ampaw, what will be our next move. we had to discuss that at the court premises when we got there to observe the trial. So we made sure that our conversations were outside, not within the hotel rooms and in hidden places. So I had to give this context because Akoto Ampaw is, when you talk about the lawyer and the social activist, the lawyer works within the rule of law, right? But social activists work to change the rules of law for the society.
Right.
And they are more focused on the marginalized, and the less privileged in society. So Akoto Ampaw is a unique personality. He is a rare gem, or he was a rare gem. It's difficult to say he was, because somehow you get a sense that he's somehow still there. I can't believe he's gone.
Legends live on, they never die.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, when I came to Ghana 3 weeks ago, I was thinking that I'm going to have lunch with him as well. But just before I say that, just to say that when we finished that trip from the Gambia, when we finished the encounter with the NIA officials, I was having a discussion with Uncle Shea on the issue. Do you know, he made jokes about it, but there was one thing he asked. He asked me, how did you feel? I was touched. Because for him to take time to ask what was going through my mind, how did I feel about that incident? I didn't even know that he has had a lot of experiences of being detained and coming out. So this was more like a walk in the park for him. So he asked me, how did you feel? How were you feeling? And I felt touched. He could understand that perhaps I would have been shaking, I would have been scared. And then we made a joke about it. We laughed over it, and that was it.
Finally, what would you say? What would you say was his role in your campaign and advocacy towards the passage of the Right to Information bill into law?
Yes. So, the point I made about somebody who is seeking to change the rules of law for a better society, Akoto Ampaw was a committed person. He made time for civil society organizing. He knew what was important. He knew when he needed to be there. I remember when I had to organize and just for your viewers to say that I was, when I left Media Foundation, I was the program coordinator for the RTI Coalition. We needed to engage the private sector. I went to him and I said to him that, look, we need to get the private sector organizations to understand the value of the right to information. And he saw the point. And I asked him to come for that meeting and speak to them, and he attended and he came. He made time to come. So he made time for civil society activism. He attended protests, picketing parliament. He was there. He was the one that wrote the zero draft. He attended media interviews. He attended parliamentary committee meetings to prepare documents for members of parliament. He wrote policy briefs. He was always there. He had compassion. He had commitment. He had passion. He was able to connect with everybody. I think that there's too many things to say about Akoto Ampaw that even time won't allow us to talk about.
That's right. That's right.
And the fact that he made civil society, he knows how to engage people and organizations in a way that produces results. And that's very critical.
Great.
And focus on public interest litigation is also something I think that he was keen on.
Ugonna, thank you very much. Ugonna is Programs Manager at the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, United Kingdom. She's also Program Development Advocacy Person, and you just heard a while ago. It's been very revealing listening, attending these events, and hearing people pull you aside and tell you the stories about Anthony Akoto Ampaw. Let's get to our next guest, Oliver Barker Vormawor. Now, you are a man who got into trouble organizing coup on Facebook. And here is a man who has a friendship, not just an association with the president, works in the firm of the president, and he's the one who comes to you to fight for you against the wrong that the state is perpetrating against you. What do you say about his example in the law practice? Please unmute your mic.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, please.
For me, Akoto Ampaw was a man and then some. Was somebody who lived by his principle, and that principle led the way in which his thinking was. So I think this is, for me, not a farewell of sorts, but I mean, how can we bid farewell to a man whose legacy we have yet to fulfill in our own lives? You know, how can we bid farewell to a man whose humanity we're so lacking today? And when I reflect on some of the things that have been said about him, or some of the things that have come out over the past few days, it seems to me that we are gaining something more about him, and that he's now living for us and as an example for all we can achieve. I mean, in his journey and in his life's commitment to defending the voiceless, championing the voice of the oppressed, standing as a beacon of hope for the marginalized in these few years, we cannot help but draw parallels between Akoto Ampaw and some of the greatest social justice activists the world over. For me, he was Gandhi, for he understood that justice could not be achieved through violence, but through the pursuit of peace, and through the pursuit of truth and righteousness. There's something that when I left jail, Akoto Ampaw called me and sat me down. And in some of the things he said to me exemplifies for me his belief in the transformative power of non-violent resistance. He taught me that, you know, for some reason, my generation had bestowed leadership upon me, he said. And he said that he saw himself in me and that I had a choice either to rededicate my life to change through a belief that our democracy can be changed through dedicated organizing. He said that he understood that I was employing satire in my advocacy and knew that I did not believe in unconstitutional change, but that I needed to really understand what that leadership my generation had bestowed on me meant. And that my words, even when it was satire, must recognize the weight of that leadership. Now, Akoto Ampaw's legal prowess is well known. A lot of people are going to talk about it, but I think his humanity was his greatest weapon. And his law served that humanity and not the other way around. You know, his commitment to the rule of law became, for him, an instrument to be able to express himself fully as an individual. So he was, in some regard, for me as well, Nelson Mandela. Because just in the spirit of Nelson Mandela, he faced the challenges that came his way head on. And there's something that Nelson Mandela once said, that I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Akoto Ampaw demonstrated this courage, fearlessly confronting systemic issues and advocating for change, even in the face of adversity. In the tradition of Martin Luther King, Akoto Ampaw dreamed of a world where individuals were judged not by their sexual orientation, but by the content of their character. So he fought against discrimination and inequality in the hope that we can create a society where every person, regardless of who they were, would enjoy the full spectrum of human rights, me included. His work was not only about winning legal battles in the traditional sense, but reshaping the narrative, dismantling stereotypes, and paving the way for a more and truly egalitarian society.
Let me interrupt you a bit.
You know,
Oliver. Hello, Oliver.
I remember when I was standing stripped naked in my...
Hello, Oliver. Okay, let's go on.
Now, I was saying that one of the things I remember is
hold on, Oliver. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'll want you to continue, but before you do that, tell us about this photograph.
So this is, I think this was the day I was granted bail. This was in front of the Tema, Court 2 in Tema, where I had been brought for bail, and he was standing. There were a number of people standing. He was standing with Justice Sai, Samuel Alesudoji were part of the legal team, and they were kind of discussing, as I came to find out later, what could possibly happen in court and what approach they should take on that day.
All right.
You know, and I was saying that when Akoto Ampaw came to me when I was in Ashaman that day, and I was stripped naked down to my boxers, and he looked at me and he said, he didn't say you, he said, we will win, be strong. And it was in that moment that I understood that he wasn't representing me as an individual, he wasn't my lawyer. was a lawyer for the vision of a different society that we were fighting for. And in that, I was only a vessel for him to achieve that. I have nothing but utmost respect for his legacy, his dedicated mobilizing. And if there's something I take away from him, is that he was almost a reluctant lawyer. But think about it. Today, so many people are fighting from LLB to get into Makola. This was somebody who, for years after he finished his LLB, dedicated his life to organizing. And at the time that he spent in jail, wasn't because he did anything wrong, but because the University of the PNDC at the time thought that his ideas and his vision of society would poison, they thought, students, that he was banned from entering any educational institution. That, for me, is the person we are talking about now. And I hope that many of us can strive to link to his legacy.
Do you see yourself doing that? Because as we hear his stories, his kind of lawyer, as we understand you presently mobilizing just pro bono for people who can't afford legal services and all of that, you as a lawyer doing things that even risk your ability to continue to practice the law.
You know, on the day we went to National Theatre, it was being talked about. I think towards the tail end of it, Professor Akoto Ampaw stood up and said something that almost brought me to tears. He was questioning, you know, the void he was leaving and whether or not there are people who were going to fill that void. And a number of people then I met subsequently were talking to me about how when he said that, they were thinking of me and the vision of that person. I think that the longevity of what Akoto Ampaw has done for our society is not something that we should underestimate. Like, we have been doing this for just the past 2 years. And I hope for the strength that he has to be able to continue some of the things we're doing. Because in that would have truly fulfilled the legacy of what he's leaving behind for us.
Okay.
You know, and so, yeah, I mean, I think that his life is a challenge to me more than I am emulating him. I think it's a challenge that we must all rise up to.
All right. And you must have felt a certain sense as you spoke about Akoto Ampaw getting up the stage and saying what he had to say, and then his very good friend, the MC, also mentioning you and pointing at you in the crowd. Thank you very much, Oliver Baka Vomawo. Let's go to Mina Mensah. Mina is in charge of the Africa office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. Thank you very much for making time to join us, Mina.
Thank you, Samson, for having me. Good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon. I know that your very good friend, Akoto Ampaw, didn't allow you to celebrate your birthday among a list of other things. But
Samson, say that again.
We can sit here and talk about him and smile because of his humanity, because of I don't even have words to describe, watching and listening to what very prominent people in Ghana and even beyond Ghana had to say about the humanity of Akoto Ampaw. What do you say, Mina, as someone who worked very closely with him?
I call him the great human being. Uncle Shea was a human being. He was not just a lawyer. He was not just a social activist. He was a great human being, a very compassionate, kind person. And if you interact with him, you realize that he's not just interested in the work that you do, but he's also interested in you becoming what you ought to be. I can't really pinpoint the time I met Uncle Shea, because he was mostly in and out of the office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, starting from I think latter part of 2007, and then into 2008, when we were working on the 45 Ghanaians who died in the Gambia.
Right.
And CHRI was then coordinating a group of people who were supporting the families of those people. And we had to interview Martin Chire, the one of the survivors. And Uncle Shea was at the forefront with that, with my former boss, Nana Oyeletha, and another colleague, Florence. As the person in charge of access to justice and police reform at the time, I had the opportunity to work closely with him. I was not working directly on the Gambian issue. Florence was, but I was with them because it was my schedule. But my main focus is on his passion for indigent arrested persons, his passion for the poor. And we have this program, the Justice Centers project, where we were trying to do pro bono legal aid services for indigent persons. And we wanted to set up this thing at the bar offices so that young lawyers could use that as their pupillage and also help indigent persons. And we are having some challenges. And I must tell you, Uncle Shea was the one who we drafted a training manual to train lawyers and paralegals. He's the one, he went through it with us. He took his time, went through that document with us, helped us train some of the pro bono lawyers. I remember Francis Sosu was, there were others, was one of them. He also went to the bar meetings with us because we were trying to engage the Bar Association to get their buy-in. He went to the law faculties, the law schools with us. He was going, Uncle Shea walks the talk. He just doesn't talk.
Right.
He walks the talk. Following up to that, we started this advocacy on access to information as well. And all throughout the advocacy, Uncle Shea was with us. Like Ogona said, reviewing documents, giving us direction, helping us, going on demonstrations with us, traveling with us, giving us guidance. We are the secretariat. The CHI serves as the secretariat for the coalition.
Right.
And our office is not too far from his office. So, we just barge into his office. We just walk in. I mean, unannounced. Sometimes he will be like, what are you people doing? I am busy, Then he goes, okay, sit down. Then we'll sit and chat. Sometimes we go there just to chat. And his passion for the underprivileged was something else. I remember there was a time we had only one pro bono lawyer. And I want to say a big thank you to this gentleman, Carlos D'Souza.
Yes.
He was the only pro bono lawyer here. Carlos was the only one that we had. And so I went to Uncle Shea's office and I'm like, Uncle Shea, you need to do something. You need to do something. You need to do something. I know you can't go to court, but you need to do something. And he linked us up to some of the juniors in his office who also were supporting the work that we were doing. So when the paralegals go to the police station,
right,
and there are people there who need lawyers, these lawyers will support them and get them out. Then he showed personal interest in my development.
Right.
I got to be a member of the Legal Aid Commission board because Uncle Shea recommended me. And the way he went about it, it was so funny. I was in the office when he called me and said, and you know what, you get a call from the AG's office. I want you to go there because you'll be part of the Legal Aid board. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wait, let's end it here because I remember watching you at the National Theatre and giving your story and your encounters with him. If we had a whole day, you will talk about... I
don't think I could even accomplish anything with
you will talk about Shea. Thank you very much. He was
a great human being.
Great.
And we are happy we got to know him.
Thank you very much, Mina Mensah, of the Africa Office of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. And Shea, as most of us called him, I had brief interactions with him, and when there were times, difficult times about certain stuff, he comes in and with a certain calm, and the guidance is platinum, and it's been very helpful. We did our very last demonstration not long ago against the Auditor General, and he was right there in the middle and center of it. He took his last breath on the 20th of October, 2023. May his gentle soul rest in peace, but he's a legend and he lives on forever. Thank you very much. This has been The Law, dedicated to celebrating Anthony Akoto Ampaw. Have a good afternoon.